This story is the story of Doron Harati. Doron Harati, who underwent a hair transplant at what he calls a black market clinic, saw death and somehow got extricated from the jaws of death, and today he is alive to tell his story. So Doron Harati is today an accomplished hair transplant mentor. He is based out of Tel Aviv, Israel, and he is very passionate, and he has a tremendous online presence internationally. It was because of the tragic hair transplant he underwent, and he lives today to tell his story. Today he is an accomplished hair transplant mentor, a hair transplant mentor who is very passionate about the work he does, about guiding the hair loss community. He works now with a few clinics, one of which is Darling Buds Clinic. And Doron Harati, it's a pleasure to have you on board. His story is very compelling, a story full of intrigue, of wile and drama. A few years back, succumbing to a campaign on social media, he got convinced about a particular clinic, a clinic abroad, where he went to do his hair transplant. It was only midway through the hair transplant that he realized that he had been scammed, that what was offered to him that the doctors would do the hair transplant, he was completely in the hands of untrained staff, unqualified staff. But since he was halfway through, there was no going back. The die was cast. The procedure was prolonged, and about 5 or 6 hours into the hair transplant, he felt faint, and there was a lot of clamor around him, around the OT, and his heart was palpitating and he was fainting. That is the time when the procedure was curtailed and he was shifted into an emergency unit of a hospital in that town. Most likely this was due to overload of medication, most likely anesthesia, that he succumbed to the side effects of anesthesia, which was not properly titrated, and he was given more anesthesia than should be given according to a person's body weight. Due to the expert care of the hospital, eventually he came out of the side effects of excessive administration of anesthesia, and he lived to tell the tale. And this instilled in him a desire to tell his story, a desire to not let such mishaps happen to patients who fall for aggressive marketing without going into the depth of the field of hair transplant, thinking all hair transplants to be the same. So today he is a successful and accomplished hair transplant mentor based out of Tel Aviv, Israel, and we are pleased to have him on board. He has supported thousands of hair loss sufferers, giving them good advice, and today he acts as a third-party validation for clinics that he recommends. Anyone seeking a hair transplant today, there are so many advertisements. You search on Google, you search on YouTube, you search on Instagram, you are likely to be confused. You cannot make out a good clinic from the bad clinic. And this is where hair transplant mentors or third-party validations for clinics step in. And because of their popularity on social media, theirs is the voice which is heard. Theirs is the voice which rises above the din of hair transplant advertisements, the noise on social media regarding hair transplant, aggressive marketing, unethical allurements and inducements. So hair transplant today is such a murky field where unless you have researched, there is a high chance that you can land up with a tragedy like Doron Harati and a host of others. You can learn more about Doron Harati's escape from the jaws of death on his social media platforms called Doron Harati. He's based out of Tel Aviv, Israel, and he takes great passion, great interest in helping patients seek the right clinics, helping patients in their search for the right clinics, and helping patients with their questions and queries about the rationality of hair transplant, what hair transplant can do for you and what it cannot. We also have another hair loss mentor who recommends Darling Buds Clinic and who has had a bad experience with hair transplant. Spencer Stevenson, also called as Specs very popularly, a very famous name in UK and internationally as well. A lot of articles in leading magazines, online and offline. A lot of videos on YouTube. A lot of videos discussing hair transplant and podcasts in collaboration with Spencer Cobrain of the Bald Truth Talk radio show. And is also a hair transplant survivor, having had multiple hair transplants before. His first few hair transplants being sordid sagas, he recovered from them, got other hair transplants, and today he sports a head full of hair because after his first poor hair transplant, he did proper research, and that is what these mentors guide you about, how to do your research about hair transplant clinics, about what hair transplant can deliver and what it cannot, and when to take medications and not go for a hair transplant. Specs is one of the original hair transplant mentors who has been active for over 10 years now, and he carries tremendous clout amongst the hair loss community today. And he has this to say for people seeking hair transplant. And he says, be warned, the hair loss industry preys on your vulnerability and isolation. I fell prey to the hands of this brutal place, and my own journey was unfortunately very long, emotional, and tremendously tiresome. My purpose and intention is to educate and inform you of what is actually available now to you, whilst keeping you safe and support you to take action in the most appropriate way for your well-being. So a black market clinic, as Doron Harati would like to call, represents the dark underbelly of the hair transplant industry. It can be defined as a clinic which is run by a doctor who's not a hair transplant surgeon, or solely by businessmen who are not from the medical field, employing unqualified or poorly qualified staff to do the hair transplant, where low price is advertised, but this low price is made up by doing huge numbers of patients without adequate care and without adequate supervision, leading to bad results on a regular day-to-day basis. These are black market clinics, and these are the clinics which Doron Harati and many other mentors warn you about. Because unless you do your research, there is a high chance that the black market industry is going to ensnare you, and once your hair transplant goes wrong, it is well nigh impossible to get a revision procedure which will satisfy your long-term objectives and goals. There is no personalized attention. The doctor perhaps doesn't even know your name, and be assured that you're not going to get long-term care or long-term resolution of your concerns and the problems you might face in the days to come in the aftermath of your hair transplant. So this is the value of hair transplant mentors like Spencer Stevenson and Doron Harati. This is where hair transplant mentors step in and guide you through the course of the hair transplant and even later. And they usually do not charge you for it. So if after a hair transplant you do not want to find yourself between a rock and a hard place, you should follow the path set out for you by these hair transplant mentors who will be acting in your best interest and will guide you through selecting a good hair transplant clinic, and throughout guiding you for many weeks, many months, and many years as you continue to evolve further, whether hair transplant or hair loss medicines is the best way forward. So when Doron Harati returned back home alive, returned back to Tel Aviv, he wanted to tell his story to the whole world. And this story went viral. Today everybody knows about Doron Harati. Anybody searching for hair transplant anywhere in the world has heard about Doron Harati and his experience at the hands of a black market hair transplant clinic. People like Doron Harati do a lot of good by cautioning people who are researching a hair transplant for themselves. So these hair loss mentors like Doron Harati are an asset to the field of hair transplant surgery. They are an asset and a force multiplier for clinics which are ethical and do good work on a regular basis. Black market clinics are low on cost and high on promise. A black market clinic can also be identified with the fact that a person who's got his hair transplant done in that clinic never returns to that clinic again. So you can see the donor area of Doron Harati. It is a ravaged donor area, a donor area which is very hard to use for a revision procedure, a donor area which does not instill much confidence in the repair surgeon. And in such cases, mostly revision is done using body hair transplants. And it is such a shame that if a hair transplant was done properly, the patient would still have so much hair for future procedures to meet his future goals and objectives. And a revision after a bad hair transplant will not allow. This is what most people do not understand. Most people think that they can get hair transplants again and again and again, because what these clinics promise you is that your donor hair grows back and you can use it as many times, on as many occasions, on as many sessions of hair transplant as you may wish in future. If at all revision is possible after bad hair transplant, It costs the moon because mostly you have to use body hair. And mostly the hair transplant procedure is a long drawn out process. It may not be possible in one session to correct a bad hair transplant. You may require 2 to 3 more sessions of scalp and body grafts. So today we are proud to announce that Doron Harati is associated with us. Doron Harati, who works with a missionary zeal in guiding patients towards good ethical hair transplant clinics which on a regular basis produce acceptable, satisfactory, good results. So Mr. Doron Harati, we are proud to have you with us and to be associated with you as a counselor, as a mentor for our patients. Thank you so much for supporting us. So it is a pleasure to be associated with Mr. Spencer Cobrain of the Bald Truth Talk show, with Mr. Spencer Stevenson, also called as Specs, and now most recently with Mr. Doron Harati. Thank you all for your support, and we look forward to a long-term association. In the next video, we'll be discussing with Mr. Doron Harati. Mr. Doron Harati will tell us about his experience of a bad hair transplant in his own words, and then he will ask a few questions and expect answers to those questions from us here at Darling Buds for the tremendous following that he has on social media. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would request you to do so that I am encouraged to bring more and more videos for you in future. Thank you.